Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 6th webinar of ACE, the Association of Spanish Scientists in South Africa. Today, we have a wonderful talk by María. But before I introduce her, the governor has, the ambassador, sorry, of Spain in South Africa has some words for her. She's going to introduce María. So if you, I'm going to share the screen with all of you.
Welcome to the last seminar this year under the title, The Africanization of the Spanish Teaching and Learning in South Africa, a New Approach, given by Dr. María Recuenco Peñalver. Dr. Recuenco is a lecturer at the School of Languages and Literatures of the University of Cape Town and Vice President of the Hispanic Studies Association of Southern Africa. She will present a talk about the need of a change in the teaching and learning of Spanish in South Africa and all the possibilities that this brings. The main focus of Africanization of universities in South Africa is to reform higher education curricula and syllabi in order to make them relevant to the experiences and identities of South Africans. That does this concept imply for the teaching of Spanish in South Africa? We will hear about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Okay, I think that introduction was very good. So here I just going to allow María Recuenco to share her screen and show us everything you have to say. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. Thank you very much, María, for being with us.
Thank you, Alba, for the introduction. And thank you, everyone. I see a few familiar names. Thank you for being there. I hope I'll be able to share a few maybe useful ideas or ideas that will, there will be some food for thought. So I'm going to share my presentation. Let me put it in the, wait, yeah, there we go. So there you have the title of the presentation, but before I start speaking about it, I'd like to say thank you very much to the Association of Spanish Researchers in South Africa, ACESA, for allowing this space to researchers, Spanish researchers. Thank you to Álvaro, the director, for thinking about me and for also thinking about humanities, because this is quite a different webinar from the ones that have been taking place. This is the 6th and last of this year. And I mean, the topics of all the authors have nothing to do with languages and humanities. We've been speaking about maths and anthropology and archaeology, and this is quite a twist. So thank you for allowing this. Thank you to Alba for agreeing to be the moderator. Thank you to the Spanish Embassy in Pretoria for sponsoring these webinars, and to the ambassador for always being there supporting us and for the kind words. And thank you to the colleagues that I see online. And as I said, it's going to be quite different, but I hope it will be interesting. Yeah, it's a pity that we cannot interact, but I'll be looking forward to questions and comments at the end of the seminar. And I'm thinking that I cannot see my watch, so let me just put my phone here, because I have a tendency to talk way too much sometimes. So let's start with the topic of this presentation, which is the Africanization of Spanish teaching and learning in South Africa. So I'm going to start with a bit of a background. I am not a specialist on the topic. I'm quite interested about it, but I'm just giving a bit of general info about it to contextualize the subject. And I will start by saying that I've decided to call or to title this presentation Africanization, but we could also say Decolonisation. Both terms refer to part of a broad decolonization movement that started with the beginning of the post-independence era in the 60s in Africa. And I'm going to talk about it within the context of higher education institutions in Africa. So just as a touching base point, I've written the name of those two conferences that kind of set up the stage for this big movement, the 1961 Addis Ababa Conference on the Development of Education in Africa, organized by the UNESCO, and then the UNESCO as well, 1962 Conference on the Development of Higher Education in Tananarive in Madagascar. So the goal we could say the goal of this movement, the Africanization of curricula and university curricula, and this conference among others, would be to achieve that African universities could listen to African societies and cultures and respond to their specific educational needs, instead of basically replicating educational models brought with colonialism. So we are talking about, French French-speaking countries that duplicated like French system, and African English-speaking countries that basically duplicated or replicated English system. So, and that's been the case in most of the African countries at all levels and most subjects, and it is the case for Spanish. So from those, the decade of 60s, when this Africanization debate started, we are going to jump, as I said, this is just to set up the scene, and we're going to jump to the year 2015, that is a bit more closer to nowadays. And it is quite an important year for many reasons. In the first place, because it is the year where the Dakar African Higher Education Summit took place, a summit that was themed Revitalizing Education for Africa's Future. And in that summit, kind of, the conversation around this building to put together like-minded institutions, university institutions, with the aim of transforming the African higher education took place, and they gave themselves this deadline of 50 years. And the objectives of this summit, and on a very broad sense, the objectives of the Africanization of universities, of African universities, could be basically concentrated on those terms that you see there in bold. So when we talk about the Africanization of the curricula, we are talking about transformation, a very also popular term nowadays. We are talking about investment, something that seems not to be that popular. We are talking about a shared vision for the future of African universities. We are talking about harnessing and highlighting and sustaining efforts and initiatives, and basically innovation in the universities. So now, in that context of the 2015 Dakar African Higher Education Summit, some problems and challenges were identified and maybe not completely addressed. But some problems, challenges, failures, if you want, were, as I said, pointed out as unemployment, dropout rate, student dropout rate, the high cost of universities in Africa, the need because of the lack of financial support, and then again, innovation, the importance of institutions for all kinds of arts, the need for the building of a continent-wide network, and the need as well for what should be a conducive environment, and the promotion of skills learned and self-training and youth entrepreneurship, and that marked, I think, in 2015 quite an important moment. That if we start thinking now about the context of South Africa, 2015 was also quite a big year for us at the universities. It was the year where the movement Roads Must Fall started. The ones, at UCT, the University of Cape Town, we were very close to this movement because it started there, and I will talk now a bit more about it, but there is the famous statue that gave origin to the movement, the Cecil John Rhodes statue. You can see there one of the slogans used during the protests. And when we talk about this movement, Rhodes Must Fall, I think that there are three main key ideas that come to our mind if we know a bit about Rhodes Must Fall. And those three ideas were decolonizing university, decolonization, transformation, as we mentioned before, and then the development of a Afrocentric curriculum. It was quite a bit, it was a agitated year, intense movements and exchange of ideas. And well, it was not only about 2015. I think from 2015, the next 2 to 3 years were quite intense at UCT, but also in general in the universities in the whole South Africa. So I've just got a bit of a overview of some of the main moments related to Rhodes Must Fall. The 9th of March of that year is the day the first action was taken by students against Rhodes' statue. And that moment was followed by many exchanges in between university management and students. It was followed as well by buildings occupation. It was followed by marches, protests, somehow pacific, others quite violent. And then the 9th of April, 1 month after, it led to the removal. You have a photo there. I'm sure that this is in the mind of a lot of you, the effective removal of the statue. But I mean, it was not the end of the movement and of the let's say exchanges and turmoil even. In 2016, in February, also at UCT, it took place. I mean, a shack was built up, set up at one of the at the main spot, I would say, in Upper Campus, in front of the library, the Jameson Steps, as a symbol against lack of housing for Black students and unfairness in the allocation of the students' housing. This shack was removed the following day, and that again ignited a protest that spread very quickly all over South Africa, again linked to this need for an Africanization of the university, a transformation for the university. And I am sure that when we think about Rhodes Must Fall, we also think about another movement that was very hot at the time. And I mean, it is, I think it comes back every year somehow. It was the movement, the Fees Must Fall movement, again, student-led movement that started mid-October 2015 as well. It was started at the University of Wits, and then spread to UCT and Rhodes. And the goal of this movement was to stop increases in student fees, as well as to increase the government funding to South African universities. And somehow the 2015 protests ended up when the South African government stated that there would be no tuition fees increases for 2016. But then in 2016 again began when the South African Minister of Higher Education announced that there would be a fee increases for 2017. And it's been, I think everything is somehow linked to this, this awareness, this need for a rethinking of the African universities and African curricula in general, that, I mean, it's been there since the 60s, as we could see, but it's been quite intense and present, I think, in our lives, especially if we are in academia, since 2015. So now, how this Africanization, it's a question that I've posed myself many times. How do we Africanize, decolonize, or just change the teaching of modern languages? Because now I'm taking this whole context into our field, which is the possibility or the suitability or the, I don't know, is it possible to Africanize modern languages? And I think we need absolutely to rethink the whole issue, and not only languages or modern languages, but maybe everything. I mean, this pandemic is also shown us that, you know, things should be, can be, and have to be done in a different way. And in terms of the modern languages, I've been thinking like, maybe what we need to do is like to think how the teaching and learning, and now let me just talk in terms of Spanish, has traditionally been done in South Africa. And then to think how is it done in the present? And then to really question ourselves and think, does it work? Is it working? Are there any problems? Is everything working? Are there challenges that we need to face? And no, if we focus on this third question, does it work, the teaching and learning of Spanish in South Africa, or in Africa if you want, in general? I think we, I would like to focus on the case of South Africa. If I think about the situation in South Africa, and not only at UCT, because this is something that we've discussed with colleagues from WITS and from Pretoria, we are facing, I think, three main challenges, which are, in the first place, we are always thinking about ways to increase the number of enrollments, because we see that some years we have a lot of students. I'm sure that we all remember the 2010 booming of Spanish related to, surprisingly or not, but related to the World Cup and the fact that Spain won the World Cup, and then, you know, everybody wanted to learn Spanish. And I mean, we would all wish for a constant, even if slow, increase, and not these ups and downs that we see almost every year. So I think this is one of the main challenges, the increasing, the constant, if possible, constant or gradual increase in the number of registrations. I think the second challenge that we have at South African universities in terms of Spanish, and probably it can apply to all other modern languages in South Africa, it is the retention rate. We see a big difference in the numbers, especially between first year and second year. We lose a lot of students after the first year. And this is also a problem that worries us, and that we are always trying to find a solution. That second problem, I think it is, among other things, it is probably related to a third challenge, that it is the employability of our students. They study, South Africans or Africans study Spanish. What for? Is it because it is a language of the football players of Real Madrid, or you know, the language of all these reggaeton and I don't know, Shakira's songs, and then once they've learned a bit, they lose interest, and then they drop it, also because maybe it is way more difficult than they would expect it, and that can also be linked to the weight in its teaching. Probably if modern languages and Spanish would help them to, once they've done with their degrees, find a nice job, an interesting job, a well-paid job using those languages, our numbers would be better. But the thing is the way we teach Spanish, or the way they learn Spanish, might not have a real impact on, you know, what they can do afterwards with the knowledge that they acquire. So I think those three realities, if we don't want to call them challenges or problems, those three realities are maybe a sign that is telling us that the way we are teaching, or that the way languages are taught in South Africa is not the best way. Because, I mean, and even, I mean, we could say, no, it is not, you know, it doesn't work the way we are teaching Spanish. Or, well, it works so, or yes, it is working. And then we can say, okay, but still, can we do it differently? Can we teach modern languages, Spanish, in a different way? And that's when I think the Africanization comes into place. I mean, we should maybe think about, you know, adjusting our curricula to a South African context. And this is one of the things that we are trying to do at the Hispanic Studies Association of Southern Africa, which is, as you can see there, it is quite of a, because of the dates that I've put there, it's quite of a recent association, even though it's been on some people talks for some years, around 10 years, but it's only, I would say, in 2017 that we got a constitution registered, and we got a board, and it's only from next year that we will get like a formal registration system for people to become a member. And I would say the main event that we've coordinated at an international level, even though it is already the 5th edition, but with international speakers, and with like the format of a proper colloquium, only took place last year, and it was at WITS. Some of the previous editions took place at UCT in 2014, and then the rest took place at the University of Pretoria, who initiated this tradition. So just to talk a bit about the association, some of the activities that were organized during this crazy year, that even though forced us to be more into ourselves, also ironically helped us to organize other kind of activities. Where, what you can see this, we've been working as an information channel and distributing all Spanish language and culture news. We've been organizing quite interesting monthly seminars on all kinds of topics. We also had some cultural activities, concerts and film festivals and round tables. And in terms of future projects related to this Africanization of the curricula, I have these 3 points within the association that are basically this: establishing networks with other Spanish language and culture related associations in the continent. We are really working on establishing these kind of contacts, and hopefully they will bring fruits. They will bear fruits soon. We are also working on the creation of African, I mean, this is very related to the previous point, creating African working and research groups. We are hoping that next year we are going to be able to start an online course on introduction to didactics and methodology and practice for Spanish teachers in South Africa, which will be mainly addressed to secondary teachers, but not only. And we are really looking forward to get more collaborators and to start the ball rolling, because we think it is something very necessary. And and it can be a beautiful project. So that would be within the association, but we also have other projects outside the association that right now it's being carried out by mainly academics, but not only, and that it is trying to do that, which I think it is the basics for this Africanization of the Spanish curricula for South Africa. So we are busy trying to create research and working groups focused on the development of new materials for teaching and learning Spanish that follow these three main ideas. We want materials that are done in South Africa, done for South African students, and done by South Africans, which, I mean, right now, and this is my biggest pain and complaint and yeah, problem, no objection to this whole project. Right now, the people that is working on this are mainly non-South Africans. So hopefully what we can do is to work in collaboration with South Africans, because I think that is the only way to produce what could be like, could really be truly Africanized materials. Because it's, I mean, I've been for 10 years in Africa, but I'm still lacking of so many knowledge and so many perspectives that can only be brought into a project like that by local students and colleagues, and this is where we really need to work, which will be somehow solved by the creation of those networks. So I'm gonna talk now, let me take the time, I'm gonna talk now about these teaching materials and mainly the textbooks used in South Africa. And the problem that they pose is what we saw before, the textbooks that we use for Spanish teaching and learning used in Africa, either at universities or at high school. Most of them are done in Europe or in America, are done by non-Africans, and they do not take much into consideration the African students' needs. And that has a huge and very severe impact on, first of all, availability, secondly, price, and then in a deeper analysis have a very big implication in terms of the suitability of the learning approaches and the methods and the dynamics that the material originates in the classroom. And this is something that I think we need to revise. It has been done in other countries because there are, in fact, African textbooks for Spanish teaching and learning that have been done in Africa by or in collaboration with Africans for specific contexts. So we can talk about Horizontes and Ya Estamos that are done in the Ivory Coast. Horizontes is the most well-known textbook, most widely used in the continent, I would say, especially in the north of, well, in many countries of Africa. And Horizontes at the time, but we are talking about a 1995 book. I mean, it is like almost 25 years old, and that's why Ya Estamos, it was so needed. It bring at a time, it brought a huge, it made a huge difference because it was, for the very first time, it was Spanish textbook that was somehow, not much, but speaking about Equatorial Guinea. But yeah, it needs some updating. But we also have Didáctica del Español that was done in Cameroon with the help, revision of University of Extremadura. And then we have also Spanish for Africa 1 than in 2010, which is also quite recent, let's say, in Ghana, and that was also done in collaboration with the Spanish Agency for Cooperation and International Development. In terms of secondary education, there are also a few textbooks that we could say are specific for an African context. In Ghana, we have the composite course in Spanish grammar from 2005. In Cameroon, we have Español in Africa, 1987. And then in Equatorial Guinea, we've got also this Buenos Dias. So there are some things, but as you can see, most of them are quite outdated, and we are in need. I think there is a need of, I mean, ya estamos. It is quite a big advance, but I mean, in South Africa, I think we really need. I mean, South Africa should be the country, working on that. So for that work to take, to put our hands into something that works, I am convinced that we should, start afresh and start working on the creation of material that does things or do things differently. And for that, I think it is vital to take into consideration these 2 points. The first one is the cultural, socio-economical, historical, and even pedagogical South African context and traditions. We can't forget about those. I mean, the materials that we have available nowadays do not take these aspects into consideration, and I think they are vital. And the same way, we should not forget that when we speak about the study of modern languages in South Africa, we are talking about the study of a language that does normally take place in a language that it is, in most of the cases, not the first language of the student. Which, I mean, if we think about it, it is somehow, I mean, it's very difficult to understand, to conceive a process like that. Our students in South Africa are learning Spanish through English, which is not the first language for many of them. So that complicates extremely the things. And I am convinced there should be a way where even if instruction or most of the instruction gets conveyed in English, we should be able to teach Spanish through or with the help of the most spoken languages of each province. But we need help. We need the help of native speakers of those local languages. But this is something that we cannot forget. We need to find a way to integrate local languages in the teaching of Spanish and in general modern languages. Then the other question that the other point that I'd like to bring to the table is the questioning of some almost automatically accepted realities. I mean, if we aspire to create new material to teach Spanish and modern languages, I would say in South Africa, we need to question 2 things. The first, doesn't really matter because they come together, but I mean, we should question the use of the common European framework of reference for languages, which is what we normally use. And I'm not talking about, the result. I mean, we all want the result of our teaching and learning experiences to be excellent. We want the students to know the language as best as they can. It is about the process. It is about how we get there. And maybe the European framework, it is not the best to use in South Africa. Or if it is the best, I think the reflection that lead to that result has not really been done. And then the other subject that I think we need to question is the suitability of the communicative approach. Because it seems that it is commonly and widely accepted that that is the approach that we should all take when we teach languages, but maybe it is not really the one, that it is the more suitable, the best adapted to the South African needs. And yeah, basically, to sum up what I'm saying, I'd like to basically summarize my vision of how this Africanization of the curriculum could maybe, ideally, potentially being tackled. And I think that for that, it should be clear in our heads that the teaching and learning of a language, of a modern language in South Africa, should be mainly two things. The one is, useful. We should make sure that Spanish is useful for South Africans. That would be the main goal. It should be of use in the South African context to either South African or African students in general. And how do we do that? Because I think that is the problem. That is why we lose students. The students come to us, I'm talking about Spanish students, but I'm sure that this is applicable to other languages. Students come to us to learn Spanish because the World Cup was won by Spain. The latest hit, it's in Spanish language. The Netflix series that they are hooked up is a Spanish one. They come to us, but then what they receive in terms of teaching, it is, first of all, what they don't expect. It might be, it is more difficult than what they thought, and it is only natural. Not only because it is being taught in English, but because it is a completely different language. It's a completely different language from the languages they speak. But it is also, after the first year, going, some of them, through a bit of a hell because they have to study a lot, then they might pass, and then they think, am I going to put myself through another year of hell just because I like Shakira, or just because I like, I don't even know who's playing that, just because I like soccer? Because they do not really see the use of studying Spanish. For us to be able to make Spanish useful for them, we need to consider and assess real goals. And I think, and here is what we are really failing the system, what we need to do is a market mapping and analysis and find out what are the professional needs in South Africa. And if, we need to create new topics on, specialization in logistics and renewable energy and tourism and hospitality, because that is what's going to help our students to find a job afterwards. Because this is what, it's what South Africa is demanding in terms of working capacity. This is what we should, work in. And then there is the other point that I think we are missing, especially at UCT and maybe UP, if I'm not mistaken, because the best way, and of course I'm saying this because I'm a translator, but also I'm trying to be objective. And I am truly convinced that the best way to put into practice linguistic knowledges acquired through modern languages, it is through translation and interpreting. Let us not forget that Spanish, in our case, it is an African Union working language, and they need translation. They have translation and interpreting needs and services that more often than not are satisfied by either people that have no professional training, South Africans that have no professional training in translating and interpreting, and or translators and interpreters from outside South Africa. So I think we are really missing a big point there in terms of first of all, attracting students, and secondly, arming students with practical knowledge that is going to help them finding a job and uncovering professional needs that exist in the South African market. So this new consideration of this Africanization of Spanish curricula in South Africa should really take into consideration the use of Spanish. And then the other aspect that I think we need to take into consideration is the relatability, the fact that, Spanish should be useful, but should also be meaningful. Students should be able to relate with Spanish, which I don't think it is the case, other than, this Netflix series or song or soccer team. And for that, I think that, which I'm not saying that, the soccer and the music and the TV culture cannot be part of our materials. They should be part of our materials because this is very relatable for a student, and we can use that. But we should also use references to Afro-Hispanic and Afro-Latin culture that have been quite traditionally forgotten in the materials that are used to teach and learn Spanish. They are there in all those African textbooks that I spoke about. There are some references. There could be more, nevertheless. And this is something that we need to address as well. We need to speak about the historical connection and the slavery from a constructive and empowering perspective. This topic exists in the African textbooks that are already available, but I think we should change the point of view. And we should obviously focus on Equatorial Guinea and the Western Sahara and in Morocco and in Cameroon, because those are countries that, the official language of Equatorial Guinea and Western Sahara is Spanish. And in Morocco and Cameroon, there is quite a production, I would say, in Spanish language. So we need to use all those things. And yes, it might be, and I'm going to conclude now, it might be a big effort. I'm not saying it's easy. I don't know how we could do it properly, but I do believe it is worth it, even if just because of the numbers. And to finish off, I'm going to show you just a table. It is not updated. You can see there that it is some study, 3 studies from 1991, 2006, and 2014 in terms of documented Spanish registrations in all those African countries. And if you see, the numbers for South Africa are quite low, even though I'm pretty convinced we are trying to track them down. And I can say for sure that they are more than that. The Spanish students in South Africa in high primary, secondary, and tertiary education, they're more than 2,000. But if you think about, check Benin, or check Ivory Coast, Costa de Marfil, sorry, those names are in Spanish, or check Cameroon and Equatorial Guinea and Senegal. Those numbers justify the need for the creation of African material for the teaching and learning of Spanish. Check Benin, 400,000 students. So I'm going to conclude here. Thank you so much, Bonga. Muchas gracias. And I'm gonna, I hope it was somehow interesting, and I'm open to answer any questions and hear to other ideas about it.
Thank you.
Do you want me to, Alba? You're welcome. Do you want me to stop sharing or?
Yes, stop sharing, please, so that we can also see questions and answers. And everything. It was very interesting, Maria, very, very interesting and completely outside of the field. And I have learned today, I must say. Before going with the question of the participants, please, if you have any question, you can address it either by chat or you can write it in the questions and answers section. Okay, and I will read it to Maria. In the meantime, I have a question. So when you started speaking, you were speaking about the colonization, right? And I wonder, how is the Spanish language being seen by the colonization movement? Are we also colonials to South Africa? Because that movement, we were speaking mainly about the South African movement of the colonization. Because, I mean, we are not the ones who colonized South Africa, but we did colonize some other parts of Africa and, you know, America and many other places. Do you think that this movement has somehow like encouraged the students to drop from Spanish or other colonialist language or culture? Or do you think it have any negative impact in the Spanish department or not at all?
I do not think so. As I said, I mean, the numbers, the drop in numbers, it is a concern, but I don't think they are related to, you know, the 2015 and following years. I think that our numbers drop after first year mainly because of that. Because I mean, the students do not really see the use of Spanish. And I mean, there are some students that are listening to us. Maybe they can comment on that. But I think that, you know, there is no, the way we teach the languages in the Spanish case. Okay, let me talk about Spanish now. It is does not translate on them getting jobs. I mean, our students are not working with Spanish, yeah. and that is a problem because they couldn't. There is a need. So I don't think, you know, since, as you said, Spain was not a colony in South Africa, I don't think we have to deal with this negative connotation, which we could have it either ways. We could, but I don't think it is in the South African imaginary or
mindset.
Mindset, yeah.
Okay, we have also here a question from Carlos Alberto Tirado Taipe. He's asking, says, thank you, Maria. Your presentation was so insightful. In terms of to reconsider the common European language, it is true the framework was prepared for a specific historical context to strengthen the multicultural reality of the new European Union, that now it is applied in all the world. In concrete, which aspect of the framework do you consider should be rethink, adapt, or remove? That's the first question. Should I read the second one, then you address?
Maybe let's read both, and maybe we can connect.
The second is in terms to reconsider of the communicative approach. Which specific aspect of this approach do you consider that should be strongly be rethink, remove, change?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I have not given much thought, to be honest. I think the communicative approach makes lots of sense in general, but I mean, if we think about the South African context, and we are thinking about a job as a translator, the communicative approach, it's not as relevant. Or if we think about, students that have no means to go abroad, and that they are not thinking about going on holidays to South America. They are not thinking about they might not have this communicative need that we immediately link with Spanish learning. So I think, both in terms of the aspect of the framework that would be or would need to be adapted, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I think the communicative approach is part of the European framework, and it can be. I'm not saying that we should not. I don't know how to put it. We should automatically reject the European framework or the communicative approach. We need to consider them. We need to question them. We need to really think seriously, like, are those approaches and frameworks the best suited for, South Africa?
Yeah, I have other question on my side, and it was about the job, but you kind of addressed it already. So obviously, when you start studying, you either go for passion because you like something very much and you don't mind what is going to be your job later on, or you are with this mindset, which is, I think, the most normal, more common way, that is what I want to work in the future. So I will study this so that in the future I will work like this. So the main thing here in South Africa is most places that you speak Spanish is because of the tourism. The Spanish in other European countries, for instance, you study Spanish in the tourism curricula, in the degree of tourism. But here there is, I don't think Spanish or Spanish speaking tourist is one of the biggest wave in the tourism industry. Am I wrong?
I'm sure that German tourism is bigger than Spanish, but I mean, South American South American tourists are also quite big in South Africa. So let's not forget about the whole South America as well. So there are quite a few tourism, like Spanish-speaking tourism companies based in South Africa. But there is also quite a lot of renewable energy companies from Spanish-speaking countries in South Africa. And logistics. I mean, I'm only thinking, like, for example, about, I mean, if you think in Europe, the hake that we eat here in Europe, it's coming from South Africa. And you have like a lot of boats, fridge boats, and I mean, the harbors in the coast are all like from Galician companies. So in terms of logistics, it's there is also a lot of work there. So it's tourism and other sectors that I think we are kind of forgetting that need people. And as I said, translation. A lot of companies need translators, and I mean the African Union. You have a lot of international institutions with headquarters in different African countries, and they all look for for Spanish. I mean, let's not forget that Spanish, and this is probably also something that we are not using well enough, or Spanish is it's a strong language for whichever reasons. But I mean, the number of speakers in the world, Spanish speakers in the world, is huge.
It is. We have more questions here. If you want, there is, I think it's Caroline. Say thank you, Dr. Peñalver, for this opportunity. In your opinion, could teaching methodologies help retain students after the first year? Do teaching methodologies matter in terms of trying to keep a high number of students from dropping the course?
Again, you see, and this is, I mean, we cannot speak about a one size fits all. And this is what we are doing nowadays. You know, we bring, we need textbooks, so we just take whichever is available, because it's not about even what we want. It is what we can bring to South Africa. I mean, this is a reality. Every year at GCT, we it's a juggle to decide which books and when it's going to be in the libraries and how much it's going to cost. And so it's very difficult to think about a one size fits all. I do think that, yeah, the methodologies used in class help to retain students. I think it's very difficult to say that one is the best, because it all depends on the student. It all depends on you as a, you know, as a lecturer. You might feel more comfortable using one or the other. I think best is to use a mix of everything and just, you know, it is a see what works with every year in every class with every student. But to, I mean, yeah, the drop in student numbers, I think, is very related to what I said. The fact that students don't see Spanish as a useful tool for them.
That's the link with the other question that we have. Should I read it to you? It's from Lina Maria Borras. She said, thank you so much, Maria. Your presentation was very interesting. I think it will be a great idea to make units for students that focus more on professional needs. For example, if your area, if you are a student of international affairs.
Yeah, I think that, and this is something that we could easily do through translation. You know, you could have specialized, like, yeah, political specialized translation, or medical translation, or you know, a module on translation focused on in the hospitality or tourism or something like that, or even in languages courses. Yeah, specialized course on Spanish for, you know, which it's been always done, Spanish for tourism or Spanish for, yeah, international affairs, for example.
Okay, I have another question from Rico Herren. Sorry if my pronunciation is not correct. I'm not linguist. So he said, thanks for your presentation, Maria. Within many frameworks of teaching and learning foreign languages, a so-called cultural approach is often mandatory, which leads to a so-called cultural learning. In this respect, teaching and learning materials are often constructing cultures as a national possession, and thus stereotypes and bases are often reproduced. Others are calling in for the construction, the colonization of curriculums when it comes to this so-called intercultural approach. What do you suggest for a foreign language teaching and learning in its curriculum?
That's a very long question, and I don't know if I'm getting the whole point of it. But when you know, when we speak about the communicative approach, I think that the alternative that I see to that communicative, that I'm not against it, but I think it might not be the best for every situation and every student. But I think an intercultural approach, it would be more appropriate. And I mean, it makes sense in a context like South Africa, where you have so many cultures and you have so many not only Africans. I mean, South Africa is a melting pot of Africa, and you have also so many foreigners, and that I think this intercultural approach, it is what I would go for,
Okay.
Among others, and not, you know, in exclusivity, as I said.
And now we have Carlos Alberto. He's saying, dear Maria, can you suggest us an author or academic research related to the book's material already prepared for African reality? For example, Ya Estamos and others?
The thing is that the material that it is, the titles that I gave on the presentation are quite, and this is, again, it is are quite local. I mean, the Ghana textbooks will be very relatable to Ghanaian students. And this, Ya Estamos, and the Nuevos Horizontes, that has been used for more than 20 years, it's also very local in terms of its, other than being outdated, but the reality, the cultural realities that they are represented and used might be not very relatable for South African students. I mean, let's not forget that we are talking about a huge continent with so many countries and with so many differences, and that the creation of in the whole idea of Pan-Africanism, I think it is quite, it's too big even to think about it. And it would be the same, the idea of a Pan-African Spanish textbook would bring also many problems with. But we could maybe think about a basic skeleton or a basic structure that could be then adjusted or adapted to the different regions, maybe, if you want, or countries, I would say, African countries. But yeah, I mean, as I said, I mean, the one size fits all, it's very problematic, very problematic.
Okay. Thank you very much, Maria. I don't think we have any more questions, just comments. So if you want, I think we can finish here. I must say that this is being recorded, so all the questions and everything has been recorded here, and they will be posted in the YouTube channel of ACE South Africa. And also the association, we will post the link in Facebook and some other platforms. So thank you very much, everybody, for being here, for participating. Thank you very much, Maria. It was a wonderful talk. I think we all learned a little bit here with you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Alba, and thank you so much, Ace, and thank you so much, everyone. Keep safe, and yeah, see you around.
Thank you, you too.